Hello and welcome to another 6 Stages Gaming video. Today we're going to be talking about the Opus 2 meta, the first couple weeks of impressions, and I really want to get into this. You guys have been asking for it, and we're going to talk about some Opus 2 decks. Now, first off, I want to have some couple pointers here. One, mono element decks are always going to be the strongest week one. We see this in all other TCGs that have kind of this color wheel or design to it where you have resources. For example, Monofire and MTG just always, or more often than not I should say, takes the lead the first couple weeks. Also want to give a special thanks to Erebos Ironclaw on Reddit, who transcribed all these lists for us. These are from the Japan Open that we're taking some sample lists from. A few we did tweak a little bit. For the most part, that's what they are. And again, I do want to point out that duo element decks have started to appear, but we're going to have more on that in the next video. So hopefully, if everything goes well, once the normal set comes out, I really want to do these videos kind of an early first couple weeks impression, midway through the set, do another update, and then probably the last couple weeks of Opus 2 meta, I want to do a final video just so we can kind of track the normal progression. So without any longer delay, let's get right into it. Let's talk about some Opus 2 decks and what you should be looking forward to in your local metas, or what you should be expecting. So I won't spend a lot of time on this because I'm sure you're sick of seeing it by now. We had an idea that Golbez was going to stick around because really it only gets better, and guess what? It got better. Now this list, keep in mind, doesn't take a lot from Opus 2 except one really important card that made the Earth Lightning list even better. But for the most part, this is going to be your standard Golbez list. I won't say a lot on this topic, but we will cover at least some key cards like we always do. So Golbez, no surprise, he's still here. Anytime that we get more 2-drops as more cards come out, you're only making this card better. It's a 9K, so the stats around it are fine. It's going to be aggressive enough. If this would have been fallen to an 8K, it's probably still would have been fine as well, but it's still really, really good. We got some more tutors, as we'll see probably in the next video, that more 2-drops came out that you can switch up for, but this deck really wanted to stay with the traditional Earth Lightning value Golbez type of deck. Now, that said, what did it gain out of the new set? So, Al-Cid. Now, this is really the bread and butter and what makes Mono Lightning, which we'll talk about in a minute, so good. Al-Cid basically says, look, if you have Rydia or Onion Knight in your hand as well, you're going to kill whatever your opponent's best card is, and then you're going to be able to put 2 bodies onto the field. Now, the thing that people kind of miss in this as well is on the next turn, let's say they play another 9K or some big beefy dude, you then have 2 characters which you can party attack with, kill their best guy, and still be left with another forward. I can't stress how relevant that is, or I can't stress enough how relevant that is, and it just creates this huge tempo swing in the Golbez deck where it might have been lacking otherwise. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, what about the no backup version? I personally don't like it anymore because the Dark Emperor that shuts off Strongest Sword Gilgamesh is seeing a lot more play in the meta, and I just don't think it's a place that you want to be. So we've been favorites of the backup Golbez meta, right or wrong, meta deck, because you can play against the other Golbez decks. You get Shantoto, you get Cloud of Darkness if you splash water. You have more answers to the meta built into it, and now you just don't die to Dark Emperor, which, yes, you have Odins and stuff like that you can answer, but that's not a spot you want to be in. If you go turn 1 Golbez and they go turn 1 Emperor, you're losing that game at that point. So we really like this version, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, so let's move on to the next deck. So Mono Lightning, as I talked about, I am super excited for this list because this list is really break your stuff deck. Now, I did make one little small change for Divider Gilgamesh instead of Strongest Sword because I personally think it's better. Sue me, that's just my personal preference. Can't be bounce, which is great. You can pump it when you need it to, which is extremely relevant again, considering your entire deck is lightning-based cards, so you can always discard something to pump it and keep it on the field. And again, we've seen time and time again that just being able to break your opponents forward is really good for 2 lightning and discarding another Gilgamesh. Now, I would like to see one more Gilgamesh in this list just so we can more reliably use Divider, hopefully use it twice in a turn. Maybe you drop the Zalbig. I'm not going to speculate on what card you drop. That's really not the point of this. So Mono Lightning, all out breaking your opponent's stuff, has some great tempo plays, and I think out of the 3 mono element decks that we're going to talk about today, this is my favorite list. You get to do some fun things with Kane. Cyclops is just an insane card, and overall I think this deck is very well positioned. So let's get into some of the card choices that made it what it is. Amon. Again, I'm not terribly sold on this card, but it is certainly good. I typically like this deck more in, say, an Ice Lightning Tempo build. I think that's really the proper place for this. However, Lightning does lack a little bit in terms of what power to cost ratio cards that it does have, and Amon is just great at being able to tap down your opponent's stuff. So kind of out of necessity for potentially a 4-drop 9K because we're playing backup Lulu. It does what it needs to do. So nothing terribly exciting about this card in this specific list, but I do think that this is a fantastic card in, say, an Ice Lightning Tempo deck. Combo this with Snow, and you can 100% sign me up for that list. I am very excited to play that and revisit Ice Lightning Tempo because, as you guys know, it is one of my favorite archetypes. Now, the card that I am really excited about is Ida. We saw this very early on, and a lot of people haven't really been that impressed with it. But again, I want to stress that, yes, while the 6K body is not that impressive for the 6-drop, here's what's important about Ida. It's an EX Burst. We're playing Fusuya more often than not, so we can have a chance to do it for free. But we're playing a Mono Lightning deck. We're going to have 4 backups very easily in this deck. 5 if you just don't see Fusuya for whatever reason. But being able to play this for either just 6 is fine, or the EX Burst, because you're going to kill, more likely than not, your opponent's best card. So this is something that is like, oh, it's okay. You know, if you hit the EX Burst early, sure, it feels bad, but again, just another card that really pushes Mono Lightning that I think is absolutely great for helping push these Mono Element decks. And personally, it looks great as a foil, so I really can't complain with that. And then, again, Death. Yes, it costs 4. You have to discard another Ida, but choose 1 4 and break it. Again, just a straight up break. And again, there's going to be different times where maybe your opponent has a Cecil, or maybe they have an Emperor where you just need to answer it, and you're going to lose something, sure, that feels terrible, but you just have to answer it. And that's where Ishii comes into play and is able to use Death. So again, if you're playing Mono Lightning, absolutely include 3 of this card. It is 100% a staple and just going to be a great card going forward as long as Mono Lightning is a deck. So I'm very excited to have this card, and again, does some amazing things for the deck. And then lastly, a super underrated common is Cyclops. So this is a card that I wasn't all that impressed with, and then I got to live the dreams at one point and says all forwards control lose 3,000 power. Now, it's not going to happen all the time, and yes, it is a little bit living the dream, but I was able to counter a Golbez break by having double Cyclops in my hand. Again, totally not going to happen all that often, but Lightning did very, very much suffer from the Golbez types deck because they didn't have an answer to what they're playing. So, again, it's an EX Burst, it's fairly cheap for what it does, and it's also just great on defense. If your opponent attacks with something that's an 8K, you shrink it to 5, you block with your 6, boom, you're done. But again, just so versatile of a card. Combos again with Fusuya, they can kill a 10K. If you hit it off the EX Burst, obviously even better. But I love this card. And in terms of what it does for the deck and just being a common, I'm really hard pressed not to just auto include 3 of these in every Lightning based deck I have going forward because of how good it can be. That said, depending on what your deck wants to be doing and what are the other element combinations that it has, it's all going to come up to what your summons might want to be. But for a common and for what this card does for Opus 2 and how it interacts with the current meta, it's pretty spicy for a common. So wasn't that impressed personally with it until I got to live the dream and play it a couple times. But absolutely an amazing common for now. Up next, we have Monofire. Now, we did just do a video on this, so I won't take a long time to discuss this deck. But long story short, if you're looking for typically the more aggressive out of the decks in a deck that wants to have a lot of ping effects in be it Furion or Black Mage backup or Palom even to a point, this is a deck that's all about getting in these incremental points of damage and then following up with an Ifrit or some other cards that's going to be able to finish off your opponents forward. Surprisingly, this has a lot of burn potential. That said, it can struggle with Minwu based decks if you don't have the right cards at the right time. That said, that's really the truth for the Mono Lightning deck to a point as well, and just some decks in general that might not be focused on ping but are focused on playing a bunch of smaller units. So always take that with a grain of salt. But that said, I think that there is enough of this deck here that even towards the end of the meta, I will not be surprised if Monofire is always around. I could see this deck being more popular to move towards a be it Fire Ice or maybe Fire Lightning deck, where the Ice and Lightning is a very small splash for key cards. Again, Cyclops, or if you're choosing some Ice summons you want to use, they're definitely good to have I'd love to see snow in this list just because I love aggressive based fire ice lists, but that's a story for another time. So this deck, all about pinging your opponent's forwards, clearing the field, and getting through for some points of damage. So Bahamut, really no surprise here. And again, with Golbez, now with Renoa, there's a lot of cards in the meta that we just have to get out of here, and instead of going to the break zone, they just get removed from the game. So things like Golbez, things like Renoa don't trigger when you play Bahamut. And I will say at the time of recording this video, if you're looking for Bahamut still, you can find them, I believe, as on Cool Stuff Inc. for like $10. So there are still some sites that have this card available. And again, if you're playing Fire, you have to play 2 to 3 of these just to respect the meta. Now, depending on what your locals might be, or depending on what the local scene might be, it's always going to change a little bit, or the local tournaments, what have you. But I think this is always a card that you're going to want to keep in your back pocket for different events. So if you have a bigger event coming up and you're playing red currently, I would very strongly urge you to put 2 or 3 of these in your list, because they just interact with the meta so well right now and are so relevant. So what did Fire really gain out of this set that makes it, oh my god, so good, tier 1? And, well, it's this asshole. Let's be honest, he's a bully. Nobody likes him. He is so annoying to play against, but he sits on his throne, he stares at you with that smug look, and he is a damn good card. Again, I've said it time and time again, they tried to balance this with having a restriction on it, but this restriction's really not that bad. It's fairly easy to pay for this card, even in 2-element decks. So, man, what a great card. It can ping stuff for 5,000 damage. You can follow that up with like an Ifrit or the myriad of other effects that are in your deck. Black Mage notably, so you can deal 9k to something and just kill it. This card's great, guys. And again, because it's a 9k, just kind of like what we saw with Golbez, because of how good it is, and because it, more importantly as well, it deals 9k when it leaves the field and takes something with it. This is a card I would not be surprised if it sees play for the next couple sets. It's insane. The restriction wasn't restrictive enough, to put it that way. Emperor's Ende is here to stay. Like, this card is just fantastic. Not as exciting for what it does, but still a very good card regardless, because we have the tutor support as needed and other Tifas to use, but is the 5-drop 9k Legend Tifa. When she attacks, choose a forward, it cannot block this turn, and then Falcon Dive, all fours with cost 3 or less cannot block this turn. So this is a card that's been a bit more interesting. I've seen lists that go anywhere from 1 copy to 3 copy, and there's really no connection towards of what different lists they want to use it in. So all the different Fire decks I've noticed, either the Pollen variants or there's the more straightforward burn and aggressive decks, they can't really agree on what the proper number is yet. Again, this is very early in the meta. I'm not terribly surprised, but ultimately, yes, it does cost a lot at 5. It is a 9k, potentially 9k or 10k, because you're playing the backup that boosts them all by 1,000 power. And the effect is really, really strong. And more importantly, Falcon's Dive doesn't require her to tap, so you can effectively negate your entire opponent's field worth of blockers. Let's say they have a bunch of 3-drops and a 4-drop. You use Falcon's Dive, attack with her, blank the 4 cost, and now your entire team just swings for free. And if you're comboing that with Red Mage on top of all of that, your opponent's going to have a really bad time. So, again, it's a card that it's really hard to evaluate between 1 and 3 and what's the proper number, because you're probably running the tutor anyway, so you can find it when you need it. But I definitely think this is a card to keep your eye on. So in every red list, I very strongly recommend at least 1, probably 2. I think 3 is personally overkill because I really like the starter Tifa. But hey, I'm not a Fire Mage, and I want you guys to be able to brew it and see what the numbers that you come up with as the meta goes on. So then we have the last deck, Mono Earth. Now, as you guys know, this has been my favorite deck to build, not so much to play. Like, I really like Mono Lightning because it's just breaker stuff, but Earth has kind of been in a weird spot that it was always kind of the support color. It didn't really have its own piece. We saw some Golbez based decks that made the best of it. We did see some Water Earth lists in Opus 1, which didn't have a lot of really great cards. We saw Gapal making a splash in the Ice Earth decks, but Mono Earth really did lack. Like, everyone agreed that it was a very strong element for what it offered up and the cards that it had, but it did lack a little bit. And now in this set, it got some insane cards that are just pushing the Mono, 1, pushing Mono Earth in the right direction, and 2, pushing just an Earth-based control deck where it needs to be. So, what did it get? Whoo, Vincent. So I will say before I say anything else, death penalty is still very expensive. Don't get me wrong. It feels great when you resolve it, but it's still very expensive. That said, wow, this card. Just being a 9K, that's very hard to interact with, and the fact that it has the ability to total cost of 7 or less and just break them for the effect. And we got the Vincent promo, so we're getting more playable Vincents as it goes on. And we have Jesse to tutor this card up. Card's a lot better than what I might have expected early on. And then if we're playing, let's say, a Earth, Water, Minwu, Splash kind of deck, maybe you include Larsa, that's a whole other discussion. But now you have a 9K that's really, really hard to kill and has an absurd special ability when the time is right. Vincent has not only brought Earth really to the forefront of just absolute tier 1 in terms of a mono Earth element by itself, but now it opens up this opportunity where we can say Earth Water is probably really good. Earth Lightning has also been a favorite instead of Lightning Earth with Golbez decks, but just taking a different direction. And there's a lot of different things that this card does for the meta, and I really like having that option where, yes, they already had Shantoto, they had some other like board wipe based effects, but it does allow us to have a cheaper option, a 4 that we can play early. We don't have to hold on to the Shantoto forever. Maybe we can get aggressive with it early on and then hold death penalty for when we really need it. So again, I am super excited for Vincent. Again, and that artwork, come on, like that is just, that is some premier artwork right there. So I am all about it. Then we have Rydia, and again, this is probably one of my favorite heroes from Opus 2, I gotta say. Gaia's Wrath, however you want to say it, deals 7,000 damage to all forwards of all events except Earth. So this is the card that I mentioned, really pushes you in that mono Earth based type of deck. But a very huge factor that people often overlook is her first part. You may discard a summon instead of discarding a card named Rydia as part of the cost. So you can play this deck that says, I want to run Titan Golem and Hecaton Care. Let's say we're going against our opponent and one of those summons is just not relevant. Let's just say Golem for whatever reason. In some crazy world you're playing that's not relevant. You can discard the Golem towards her cost. Yes, you can discard any card for the 2 Earth Crystal points as if it's an Earth card. But having more options to use her special effect or have it come up more often is amazing. Like was very surprised at how relevant 7k damage is as well. Now again, that's the whole point for using the plus 1000 power backup, so you can hopefully get to that 8k marker because as we keep saying, 9k is the new 8k and 8k is the new 7k for the way that these different power ratios stack up. But Rydia does a really nice job at being able to keep decks in check. And again, Golbez deck, it's here to stay, guys. You have to respect it, and Rydia does a nice job of cleaning that up. Now, sure, they're going to keep their Barret, I guess, but that's only a 6k, and if that's all that they have on the field, you're probably still okay at that point. So Rydia is best girl, and she's going to be sticking around in these Mono Earth decks for a bit. And then lastly, the big boss, the fighter himself. I am super excited for this card, and you guys know exactly how much I love it. Anytime that you have a fight spell, and more importantly, it is the forward that is dealing the damage, not the card itself for the effect. So, Terra can deal double damage with Magic Charge. Warrior of Light can deal double damage to 4 cost more, I believe it is off the top of my head. Sid Highwind is going to be able to mill your opponent 2 cards. Like, just what this card offers, 4-drop backup, EX Burst, all that is fine. Has a fight effect, fine. And it only gets better as different either on kill or on hit, whatever effects come out in this game. So super excited. Again, every Earth deck that I have going forward, be it if it's a mono Earth deck or it's going to be split between a couple elements, it's going to have at least 2 of this card. Honestly, it's really hard to convince me not to play 3 just because of how much I love this card. You can use Delita to break your own backup when necessary and play this again. And I can't tell you how many games I was able to win with the Ice Earth deck because I was able to play this early, remove their key threat, play a Delita, break it, maybe 3 or 4 turns later, be able to play another one, kill their best guy again, and then just swing for the win. The power level that this card represents and the different utility that it has, and again, it's an EX burst. I just can't stress how awesome that is. You're now giving Earth this removal spell. Yes, you have to have a forward on the field, but let's face it, you're playing mono Earth, so chances are if you're playing even Yang, will randomly be like an 8 or 9k. That's going to be able to kill one of your opponent's forwards. Card is great. Again, play it, please, people. If you're playing Earth, play at least 2 of this, if not 3. I know it breaks the rule of playing, not having a special, discarding extras, what have you, to play 3, but I love the EX Burst and it is absolutely insane. So what else does that mean? So that was a very early video on Opus 2 meta, very quick overlook, and I just wanted to highlight on the decks that we saw. Now, about a month from now, we'll have probably near a dozen more events between London is getting more events, Japan obviously has all their schedule out, hopefully the United States will hear something. Again, I'm hoping June, that was kind of my whole expectation. June, July is when we might start hearing about events for us, but who knows. Either way, we will continue to bring you guys Opus 2 meta reports. Hopefully you like this method with having the list and the picture as well. And I can't wait to see what direction that this meta goes in. Again, Golbez is here to say that much is clear. Mono element decks had a very strong impression early on, but I think we are finally seeing more 2 element types of decks appear. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you like this style, if you want me to continue this style of videos for the other Opus 2 meta reports, what have you. Drop us down a comment down below. I love talking to you guys in the comments, and the rest of the team always loves hearing your feedback. But for now, that's all we have for this video. Again, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. We really appreciate all the love and support. If you haven't already, check out FFTCG for a database, and we have a deck builder that's in the work right now. We have a ton of great stuff coming for that. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and we'll catch you on the next 6 Stages Gaming Meta Report. Have a good one.